We're sitting here 30 days out from a midterm election where our basic reproductive freedoms and political freedoms are on the line, where families like mine that depend on marriage equality aren't going to fit in the MAGA view of America. I'm looking forward through the windshield at holding this majority, and that is the larger moral imperative, so that the people who would have set aside the election, 139 of them were already in Congress on January 6th, and they voted to set aside the election. 75% of the Republican caucus right now supports a nationwide ban on reproductive freedom, abortion. That's the moral imperative to keep those people out of power.
That was the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Sean Patrick Maloney, on the stakes for our country and that Democrats face with this year's midterm elections just over 1 month away. Our next guest has dedicated her life to fighting voter suppression and getting more people out to the polls. Joining us now, Stacey Abrams, of course, the Democratic candidate for governor in Georgia and the founder of the voting initiative Fair Fight. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I have to first get your personal reaction. I'm sure for you, it is not surprising. For us, we're all kind of picking our jaws up off the table. But Herschel Walker's scandal, not just of his conduct and lying about it, but of being someone whose hypocrisy has now been laid bare before the Georgia electorate, that he would allegedly, based on reportings in the Daily Beast, talk to a woman he's in a relationship with, pay for an abortion for her, send her a get well card, but advocate a national ban.
In Georgia, hypocrisy is contagious. Brian Kemp has said that it's not his place to be involved in the personal lives of others, yet he has passed and signed into law proudly the most draconian abortion ban in Georgia's history that denies women the right to choose after 6 weeks. But he has nothing to say about his running mate, who is more than willing to, or at least according to reports, has done exactly what he has prohibited women from being able to choose to do to protect their lives and to protect their families. The hypocrisy between Brian Kemp and Herschel Walker is not only unconscionable, it is a very strong sign of the kind of leadership that Walker would provide if he were elected and that Kemp has failed to provide to the state of Georgia. It is a rule for himself and different rules for the rest of Georgia.
And how is that playing? I mean, are you hearing, is the Herschel Walker scandal and the refusal of any Republicans to withdraw their support for his candidacy, is that hurting Republicans?
We don't know yet, but we are going to absolutely make the case, because the reality is their hypocrisy is not limited to the hypocrisy of abortion, although it is draconian and unconscionable. Because under the law in Georgia, a woman can be investigated for a miscarriage. Under the law in Georgia right now, women are being told that they cannot have access to basic medical care because the doctors and nurses are afraid that they will be subject to 10 years in prison. But we also know that the very party that has said that women cannot make their own choices, they're being absolutely silent. In fact, they're rallying around someone who has done exactly what they've denied the right to other women to do, to women to do. And what's more disturbing to me is that Brian Kemp likes to hold himself out as a moralist, but he is someone who is an opportunist. He refuses to stand on his convictions, and instead he uses his political power to strip women of their freedoms, to attack the LGBTQ community, to engage in voter suppression. If you are not like him, he is not for you.
Stacey, Liz Cheney is fresh to the fight, if that's a good word to use, to protect and preserve democracy after voting for Donald Trump in 2020. She saw enough after January 6th. She was in Arizona making the case that you cannot vote for Republicans if you care about democracy. Would that be helpful in your state?
It would be, unfortunately, and you've actually been incredibly thoughtful about this. But writ large, Brian Kemp has been lionized for simply not committing treason. We have yet to see anyone investigate what does it mean to just be lionized for the basics of doing your job. For 246 years, every other governor managed to not commit treason. Every Secretary of State managed to not commit treason. But what he has done is be the architect of a voter suppression law that is already harming Georgians this year. 64,000 people have had their right to vote challenged. including groups, white supremacist groups, who've used the Brian Kemp law to challenge the right to vote for black and brown voters across the state of Georgia. And once again, Brian Kemp's hypocrisy keeps him silent. He signed this law, proud of it, claiming that he did so because it was necessary, when he admitted during his primary that he only did it because he was frustrated by the results of the election. He is a voter suppressor architect, and he has continued to attack the right to vote in the state of Georgia. He attacks our freedoms, our freedom to vote, our freedom to control our bodies, our freedom to be who we are, and he is willing to do that to win an election. And hopefully, folks like Liz Cheney and others will go beyond just the people who were willing to stand up and say it, and look at the people who silently let it happen and have suborned the very same behavior. They just haven't sought the spotlight for it.
Stacey, how has, it's interesting, the voter suppression law passed in Georgia was the first one, I believe, that emanated from the big lie. I think Georgia was the first place that it was passed and signed into law. It was so radioactive at the time that Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game out of your state. But then everyone fell silent. And now I think dozens of other states have passed voter suppression laws predicated on the lie about election fraud. That lie has infected the Republican Party, hundreds of Republicans running as election deniers. What can be done, in your view, to dispel or de-radicalize or bring back to the truth or the facts all the Republicans who still believe in the big lie?
We have to recognize that there are two facets to this challenge. There's voter access and voter outcome. Voter access is who gets an opportunity to be heard, and then election outcome, let me correct myself, it's voter access and election outcome. Election outcome is the source of the big lie. The outcome of the election was not what they wanted, and therefore they've lied about everything that preceded it. But they were suborned and aided by those who denied access. And that is where we have not put our attention. To your point about the silence, we have been so myopically focused on the election deniers, we've ignored the election suppressors. Those who stop us from being heard are just as egregious as those who try to manipulate the outcome. And in a democracy, it is not simply about the outcome, it's who gets to participate in the process. The work that I've done for the last 4 years, the last 15 years, for most of my adult life, has been focused on access. No politician is entitled to victory, but every Georgia citizen, every American citizen is entitled to access if they are eligible. And to the extent the Republican Party has been able to lionize and lift up those who will not only engage in voter suppression, but celebrate it, and at the same time only chastise those who lie about the outcome, we're only paying attention to one side of the equation. But if we don't solve both sides, democracy falls.
Can you push back against the suppression bills as a single party? I mean, how do you make it a bipartisan effort to say, listen, if you guys are so confident that you're on the right side of history, why don't you help me expand access to the right to vote?
Unfortunately, because right now this is all about winning. And we know that Brian Kemp, there was a 288-page order that came down from a federal court. The last three claims that we'd made during our Fair Fight action, we did not win those claims. But if you read the 288-page order, repeatedly, the federal judge said that Brian Kemp operated a racist, discriminatory system that disproportionately harmed access to the right to vote. But what he also pointed out was that the Brnovich decision, which came recently in the 2020-2021 term of the Supreme Court, permitted that type of behavior. As they continue to erode the Voting Rights Act, if we only focus on the lie that Donald Trump tries to tell, but we ignore the very architecture that made his lie plausible, then we are suborning this behavior. And what I can do, not only as a candidate for governor, but as an American citizen, is refuse to be silent about this. There are those who would love for me to stop talking. They create this false equivalence because they're hopeful that we won't pay attention. Brian Kemp held 50,000 black and brown people from being able to vote. 90% of them were black and brown people in 2018. He made it illegal for people to get water in line. He outsourced voter suppression to white supremacists through this upcoming bill, through the SB 202. And there has been no voice loud enough about it because everyone has been focused on the 2020 election, but we've got to be worried about 22 and what that means for 24. I'm running for governor because if I win, when I win, I can do the work of making sure that every Georgian, regardless of party, believes in their power to be a part of our electorate. I want us to fight for each other. I want us to have a governor who cares, who's willing to help, and who protects our freedom. And instead, we have a governor who's proven he doesn't care, who has refused to help, and who has attacked our freedom at every single turn. This is an opportunity for a referendum in this nation about who we want to be and who we intend to serve. And my mission is to make certain that Georgians understand there's only one candidate who looks forward to serving them.